Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, in an unexpected sign, the months-long political impasse could be drawing to an end. Korea's ruling and main opposition parties agreed to pass key bills at next week's General Assembly session, including ones for the 2014 budget and spy agency reforms. The state-run rail operator KORAIL says it will hire 660 new workers as train services in the nation remain below 80% of normal levels on the 18th day of the strike. The head of KORAIL will visit a temple in Seoul later today, hoping to meet a union leader holed up inside. Plus, Egypt's military-backed interim government intensifies its crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood by declaring the group a terrorist organisation. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. And we start with some news just coming in. In a move that caught almost everyone off guard, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe paid a visit to the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo on Thursday morning.
NHK and other Japanese media outlets are reporting that Abe visited the highly controversial shrine on the first anniversary of his taking office as Prime Minister. It is the first visit to the shrine by a sitting prime minister since Junichiro Koizumi visited the shrine in 2006. The shrine honors convicted war criminals along with Japan's war dead. The visit will almost certainly escalate the already tense relations with Seoul as well as with Beijing, who see the shrine as a symbol of Tokyo's unrepentance of its war wrongdoings. Korea's main rival parties are engaged in a last-minute push to pass next year's budget bill and a spy agency reform bill before the year's end. This follows the surprise agreement between the ruling and main opposition parties on Christmas Day. Our Kim Hyun-ji has more.
The ruling and opposition party leaders of the Special Parliamentary Committee to reform the National Intelligence Service met Thursday to hash out the details of a reform plan for the spy agency. On Wednesday, the floor leaders of the ruling Saenuri Party and main opposition Democratic Party agreed to pass next year's budget bill, along with a NIS reform plan, next Monday. The $340 billion budget plan for 2014, drawn up by the government in September, has been stuck in the legislature amid a deadlock between the rival parties over allegations that the spy agency tried to sway public opinion in favor of now President Park Geun-hye ahead of last year's presidential election. The Christmas Day deal, however, did not include an agreement over other key bills. The Saenuri Party demanded the main opposition party help pass bills aimed at facilitating foreign investment and tourism in the country. President Park urged policymakers earlier this month to pass these bills, saying they are necessary to revive the sluggish economy and give momentum to the gradual recovery. The Democratic Party, however, called for prohibiting efforts to privatize the state-run rail operator KORAIL and writing such a ban into law. The 7,600-member railroad union has been striking for nearly 3 weeks, the longest rail strike in Korean history, to protest the government's attempt to set up a subsidiary company to run a new high-speed train line from southeast of Seoul to the southern port city of Busan. The railroad union says the move is part of the government's plan to eventually privatize national rail services. But the government stresses it has no intention of doing so. Although the rival parties failed to reach a consensus over these issues Wednesday, they did agree to continue discussing these bills at respective standing committees. As for next year's budget bill, the rival parties have cleared about 2/3 of 120 government business projects, mostly to do with job creation and creative economy. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
Turning to the nationwide rail strike that is now into its 18th day. State-run rail operator KORAIL says it will hire 660 new employees to reduce the strain from the prolonged strike. Passenger train services are running at about 75% of normal levels, while subway services in Seoul have been reduced to 85% of regular levels. Later this afternoon, KORAIL CEO Choi Yeon-hae plans to visit the Jogesa Temple in Seoul to urge 4 union members holed up there after evading police arrest to return to work. The union launched the strike in protest of KORAIL's plan to establish an affiliate for a new high-speed train line, a move it says is the first step toward privatization. The union has called for rallies throughout the nation on Thursday and a large-scale protest in Seoul on Saturday. And as we mentioned, the railway strike has now entered its 18th day, the longest in the nation's history. Over 150 workers have been laid off and 10,000 have been dismissed on disciplinary grounds. So what has brought on this the nation's railway road company to this point? Our Yuri-an has more.
The overhaul of KORAIL, the operator of Korea's railway monopoly, has emerged as a test case for the government's determination to rein in the lax management of debt-ridden state companies. That's because the state-run railroad operator saw its debt triple in the past 8 years to over $16 billion. Despite the piling debt, however, KORAIL has continued to pay out bonus payments and raise wages of its employees by more than 5% every year since 2005. The wage increases came during a period when the company was posting an average annual operating loss of $470 million. Critics say KORAIL symbolizes the inefficient and lax management that pushed finances of state companies and other public organizations to dangerous levels. The government, which has concluded that the snowballing debts in public institutions have emerged as a serious risk to Korea's economy, says it is committed to setting up a subsidiary of KORAIL to improve efficiency through competition in the country's rail service. But unionized workers, which is on a longest ever strike in the nation's railway history, is strongly opposing the move, calling it a scheme to eventually privatize the company. There's no sign when the railway strike will end, but how it will be resolved will certainly set the course for future restructuring of the nation's public sector. Yuri-an, Arirang News.
North Korea has demanded South Korean President Park Geun-hye decide whether her policy towards the North is based on trust, which she says it is, or confrontation. In a statement on Wednesday, Pyongyang's committee that handles inter-Korean affairs said the Park administration needs to choose whether it wants to continue on its path of confrontation and war, a policy that will only lead to self-destruction. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the South Korean government does not feel the need to respond to each and every one of Pyongyang's quote-unquote rude remarks, but did add Seoul plans on announcing its official stance on the matter later on this Thursday. President Park's so-called trust-building policy aims to thaw relations with Pyongyang by rebuilding trust. Korean consumers remained confident in December, although they appear to have some doubts about certain aspects of the economy. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that its consumer sentiment index came in at 107 for December, unchanged from the previous month when it hit a 33-month high. The index is an indicator of consumers' outlook on the economy, and a reading above 100 means that optimists outnumber pessimists. Consumers seemed hesitant, however, when it came to the outlook for the next 6 months. The index measuring people's projected consumption dropped 1 point from November, and the one measuring their general outlook for the economy in the future fell 2 points. The Korean government is set to move forward with its plans to realize a creative economy, which is one of President Park Geun-hye's key goals. And as our Oh Jun-ju tells us, Korea should be able to expect some tangible results by the end of next year.
President Baek has been putting great emphasis on her vision for a creative economy since her inauguration in February as part of efforts to create more jobs and new growth engines. Many people were skeptical about the plan in the beginning, saying it lacked substance. But it seems now that the nation will be able to start seeing some tangible results from the plan by the end of next year, as the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning is expected to give shape to plans first made in June. A major part of the plan involves setting up a research and development fund worth roughly $180 million to ensure that technologies developed by research institutions lead to businesses. The fund is expected to be in place until 2018. The Science Ministry also hopes to improve cooperation with the private sector. The government will set up a public-private council and bureau to seek specific projects on the creative economy and enhance regulations to foster new growth industries. The government is also expected to devise a plan for the broadcasting industry, the first in 14 years, to further develop the sector. The Korea Communications Commission and the Science Ministry will start discussing ways to ease regulations on broadcast media ads and unify regulations imposed on paid TV channels. The government has also increased its budget for science and technology development for next year by 2.2% compared to this year to $11 billion. The budget is expected to be spent on space launch vehicle development, lunar exploration technology, and the creation of venture firms based on newly developed technologies. But whether the government's 2014 budget proposal will pass the National Assembly and when still remains as a variable, with the opposition party demanding cuts in the budget for President Baek's key pledges. Oh Jun-ju, Arirang News.
Recent economic data shows that Korean steel makers are likely to suffer from declining profits in 2013, with exports for steel-related products falling for the first time in 4 years. But the new year brings new hope as local firms hope to turn things around by establishing key partnerships in overseas markets. Our Polly reports.
This past week, the first blast furnace was ignited at a new steel plant in Indonesia, representing a landmark project between Korea and the Southeast Asian country. The grand opening comes 3 years after Korean steelmaker POSCO launched a joint venture with Indonesia's state-owned Krakatau Steel.
We will help them to perform. We will help them to produce more, and we're willing to take a sizable amount of slab. This is produced by Krakatau POSCO. So this is again a very important milestone.
The $3 billion plant is the Korean steel giant's largest overseas project yet, with annual production estimated to reach 3 million tons.
We are proactively entering and contributing to Indonesia's industrial development. Gaining a foothold in the Indonesian market is very important because it gives us a foothold in the whole Southeast Asian market.
It's just one part of POSCO's strategy to expand its global reach amid a saturated domestic market. The Korean firm is currently building another integrated steel mill in Brazil that is set to begin operations in 2015. The move would tap into the world's largest supply of iron ore, as well as help smaller Korean companies break into the Latin American market.
As demand in the global and domestic market quickly recovers, the most important ability producers will need to develop will be absorbing this demand using existing steel production facilities.
Despite a lackluster year for local steelmakers, Korea's heavy industry titans plan to accelerate their overseas investment and expansion. The idea is to keep moving in order to survive the current economic slowdown and ensure they catch the next wave of worldwide growth. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Environmental pollution is one of the biggest challenges facing our world. But the city of Ulsan, a center for Korea's auto and oil industries, has shown that even a heavy polluting metropolis can go green. Our Kim Min-ji walks us through the city's eco-friendly transformation.
Ulsan, Korea's 7th largest metropolitan city, is home to one of the world's largest industrial complexes. Originally a fishing port, the southeastern region is now an industrial powerhouse for the nation's leading vehicle factories, shipyards, and oil refineries. The rapid industrialization that began in the 1960s has prompted major heavy and petrochemical companies to invest in the region, but it's come at a high cost to the environment. In order to address these environmental issues, the city of Ulsan established an eco-police force back in 2004. The goal was to launch 110 eco-friendly projects across the city as part of efforts to balance industry and nature. Well, nearly 10 years later, Ulsan has made tremendous strides to realize that sustainable future. More efficient industrial facilities have cut emissions of sulfur dioxide, while expanded sewage treatment plants have significantly reduced the level of pollutants in the Taehwa River. Other milestones by the Eco Initiative include growing city park areas to 4 times their size compared to a decade ago. The local government says it's an accomplishment made possible by residents coming together to improve their city.
At its source was the establishment of a comprehensive environmental plan. Businesses, citizens, and environmental groups, one by one over the 10 years, worked consistently to build these planned facilities and systems.
Ulsan City is counting the success it's had cleaning up the air and water as part of its mission to build a global green industrial city that everyone can enjoy. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news, join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. NEWSLINE at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
Just 6 months ago, the Muslim Brotherhood controlled pretty much all aspects of Egypt's political system. Now, all that is gone, and the interim government's designation Wednesday of the Brotherhood as a terrorist organisation looks to be the final nail in the Islamist movement's coffin. Shin Se-min reports.
In a move that'll give authorities much wider scope to crack down on the movement, Egypt's military-backed interim government on Wednesday declared the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist group. The country's deputy prime minister said the move will criminalize and ban the group's activities, including demonstrations. He also accused the Brotherhood of carrying out a suicide bombing on a police headquarters near Cairo that killed 16 people and injured at least 140. The declaration is one of the strongest statements the military-installed government has made against the Brotherhood. This statement has triggered a dramatic escalation in tensions between the authorities and the Brotherhood, which has waged protests on a near-daily basis since a military coup toppled the country's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi, in July. The Brotherhood says the government's declaration is based on false accusations, and it vowed to continue its protests in support of Morsi and the rest of the leadership who remain in jail. The interim government is pursuing a number of criminal cases against Morsi, including one for inciting deadly violence in December 2012. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And Turkey's government has been plunged into turmoil after 3 cabinet ministers resigned over a corruption inquiry in the space of a single day. Announcing a major reshuffle Wednesday, Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan named 10 new ministers, almost half of his total roster, after talks with President Abdullah Gül. Police are probing allegations of illegal money transfers to Iran and bribery for construction projects. The ministers who stepped down did so after their sons were taken into custody in relation to the investigation. All 3 deny any wrongdoing.
United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called Wednesday for an end to the violence in South Sudan, where thousands are believed to have been killed in more than a week of violence between the army and rebels loyal to the current leader's former vice president. Amid reports of up to 3 mass graves in the country, Ban called the ethnic attacks a grave violation of human rights and urged the 2 rivals to end the conflict peacefully. The message comes a day after the UN Security Council voted unanimously to nearly double its peacekeeping force to 12,500 troops and roughly 1,300 civilian police. Books are a good barometer of what people think, want, and feel, and the most popular books can also tell us a lot about what's going on in society. Our Song Ji-san has a roundup of the bestseller books of 2013.
What did you read this year? You might get all the information you need from the internet or your smartphone, but still, most people turn to trusty paperbacks.
I browsed through the bestsellers and I'm interested in books on the humanities. Today I picked up this book called One Thing, which helps you see what's important in life and focus on that one thing.
I buy 2 to 4 books every time I go to the bookstore, and I mostly look for books on different hobbies. I want to read more books on travel and hiking in the new year.
And the best-selling book this year was by a Buddhist monk whose tweets were read by those in need of advice or lessons on life.
Healing continues to be the key word for this year too, with people turning to books for consolation. Reflecting the trend, Venerable Heaven's mentoring essay, Things You Can Finally See When You Stop, has topped the bestsellers list for 2 consecutive years.
In the meantime, fiction made a comeback in 2013. Novels by foreign and domestic authors dominate top 5 of the best books of the year, with French psychiatrist François Lelord's Hector and the Search for Happiness, and Korean literature legend Cho Jung-le's latest book, Great Jungle. But when you take a look at numbers 6 through 10, there are more practical books, including self-help books like Tong Fu and The Power of Habit. By age group, the number of books bought by people in their teens and 20s has continued to drop in recent years, while the amount bought by those in their 40s to 60s and over has risen.
The number of books bought by young readers drops every year, and they spend more time with their smartphones and other entertainment devices. What's also interesting to note here is that the baby boomer generation, people now in their 50s, are the best customers these days.
2 TOEIC test study guidebooks also made it onto the top 20, reflecting how much time and effort Koreans are putting in to improve their English. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Really amazing scenes there out of Japan.
I wonder how long they had to practice for that.
A long time, I'd imagine. Many knocking into each other quite a lot in the practices, I'm sure. But let's get a check now on the weather by going over to our Lee Ji-yeon, who's standing by at the Weather Center. Good afternoon to you, Ji-yeon.
Well, good Thursday afternoon, Mark and Ulsan. Well, unlike the somewhat mild morning we had, it will be a bit colder this afternoon than it was yesterday. And some parts of the country have been receiving a bit of rain and snow. Now, we can expect a total accumulation of less than 1 centimeter in the western parts of the country and up to 3 centimeters in Gangwon-do and up to 15 centimeters in the mountainous part of Jeju Island. But that should all let up by the evening. And things will get noticeably cooler starting tonight and tomorrow morning. We will wake up to a temperature of -8 here in Seoul. So we gotta prepare for the chilly morning tomorrow. And the daytime highs will stay on the minus side as well. And it looks like the bitter cold weather will persist throughout the weekend, so get ready to gear up with winter accessories to keep the chill away. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The afternoon high, Seoul this afternoon will peak at 3, while Daegu and Gwangju get up 7 in the afternoon, and Busan should climb into 9. Now for other regions, It looks like Jeju should see a high of 8 in the afternoon. Daejeon and Dokdo will get up to 5 and 6, while Mount Kumgang only tops out at -5. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me today. Enjoy your lunch break and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Now back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Well, thank you very much for the weather there, Jian. And before we go, we will be bringing you more details and reaction to Shinzo Abe, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit earlier today to the very controversial Yasukuni War Shrine. And our next newscast is coming up in about 90 minutes at 2 p.m. Korea time.
Well, that does it for this Thursday edition of Newsline at Noon. And join us again tomorrow here in Seoul.